Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our first episode of Tuesdays with Forward. Now that we have migrated, to be more summer friendly and give everyone their Sunday afternoons off, and it's raining too, at least where I am. So all the more reason that we can be indoors together. And I want to welcome our fantastic guest this evening. But before I do, I'm just going to give a quick shout out to Scott Hayden. Thank you, Scott, for
Hello.
helping put all this together. And then to welcome Justina Vickerman, who's here as a representative of IATSE, which is the Stagehands Union, the International Alliance of Theatrical and Stage Employees. We at Forward work with IATSE members on every one of our productions at Overture Center, and phenomenal, talented professionals that make everything we do look better and run more smoothly. And they're yet another segment of the theater business that has really been reeling during this period of COVID-19. And so we thought having Justina on to talk about what IATSE does here in Madison and how everyone is doing right now could be really interesting. So Justina, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you for asking me. We're behind the scenes usually, so people, unless we screw up our jobs, most people don't realize we're there. So that kind of.
I had a stage manager who always used to say, when is there recognition for the people who wear black to the play? It should be never. But I actually disagree. I like to give all the recognition to the people who wear black to the play. But how is everything going? Well, why don't you start? Actually, let's go backwards a little. Talk to us a little bit about what and who IATSE is, both sort of globally, but then also in terms of the Madison membership.
Well, in terms of Madison, so we're a mixed local. The IATSE actually covers everything from EMTs who are working on film, the people who clean the porta potties who are working on film, catering, box office, front of house, and as well as behind the stagehands and moving projectionists. Now, locally in Madison, we're a mixed local, so we represent both stagehands and projectionists. There are locals that are just, there aren't any, I don't think, left that are just projectionist locals, but there are some that are just wardrobe. That's all they do. In Madison, we cover wardrobe also.
And what are some of the places in town, aside from Overture Center, where members work?
We are all over, actually. We work with also the city of Madison. We work with the AV department. We also do overhire for the Mononatiers, where if they have, they need more people, we bring in people who help them do operations things, setting up for conventions. We also work for the city clerk's office, helping them with the election equipment. We have one stagehand who is certified in repairs of election equipment for us. So we do work there. We're at the Kohl Center. We do the changeovers between basketball and hockey at the Kohl Center. We set up graduation at Camp Randall. We also do changeovers in the field house for volleyball and wrestling. And we also do major concerts in pretty much all the major venues. We do a little bit of work at the Sylvie. They have non-union for their basic hands, but they hire union riggers to do all the rigging for the Sylvie.
It's so eclectic. I love the breadth of the kinds of work, but it all is basically things that want to run smoothly.
It is, it's interesting because everybody thinks, oh, all you're doing is plays, but I work in video, and a lot of my work is conferences. People are showing off. We did one where they showed up a new robotic equipment for a milker, some sort of new milking robotic thing. And so you end up working a lot of those type of events also, and as well as the plays and concerts and such.
Yeah. And it's interesting to me, we work for a company where we work with a lot of different unions, obviously IATSE, Actors Equity, stage directors and choreographers union, the designers union. And with IATSE, it's not so specific to the companies as it is to the space
Right.
correct? So like Overture is a union house. And
Right.
so that's a contract that's negotiated, and, companies that are producing in there, unless they were, grandfathered in from Civic Center days, use union stagehands. And it seems like that's the case at a number of other venues around town.
Yeah, well, there are certain like rules, like the Capitol Theater. Pretty much, it doesn't matter if you're grandfathered in before; you're required to use union stagehands in certain key places. Like CTM does do Christmas Carol in the Capitol Theater. They're required to have one of our guys as an audio lighting, the flyman, and the head carpenter.
Mm-hmm.
And if they were to use the follow spots, they haven't for years. They're required to have IATSE members do those. Otherwise, they can bring in their own people to supplement, because of the whole, they were there long before, we were actually CTM, I think, opened the Capitol Theater when it was the Oscar Mayer in 79. So they've been there a while.
Amazing. And how does one become a member of this union? Is there a typical path, or is it very...
Some things are varied. There are certain requirements. You have to have worked for 400 hours with us. You don't have to do it within a certain time period. So some people it takes longer than others, because a lot of people have other jobs. You have to work 400 hours. You have to be 18 years of age and have lived in our jurisdiction, which is South Central Wisconsin, for 18 months before you can apply. And then there's a application process where you put in your application, there's an interview, and you're an election or a vote. They vote you in.
And is that the same? And I'm wondering if that's the case everywhere, or if things have changed. My brother became a member of IATSE, back in our New York days. And I know he's been very, very proud of that as well. But I think that was a more quick turnover.
Well, it sort of depends. So some people get their cards because they organize a show. And if they organize a show, then everybody on the show is given a card. That's part, or they've organized a theater. If we were to choose, like, say, we Theater A has always been non-union, but we organized Theater A. All of those people who signed, it's called blue cards. All of them who signed the blue card become members.
Yeah.
And because that way, and the contrary to popular belief, they do not lose their jobs. Senior IIA members cannot move into their positions. They keep their jobs, because otherwise, why would you do it?
Right.
So
that was his situation. Roundabout Theater in New York went union when he happened to be working on a show.
And then, that's a really easy way to get your car. I mean, it is, but it isn't, because there's a lot of contract stuff involved in it.
Sure.
But and other people, other locals have different rules. I think in New York, local 1, you have to have earned a certain amount of money in an IA house in a certain amount of time in order to get your local 1 card. Mm-hmm. And some locals require an apprenticeship.
Yeah,
we don't. It doesn't matter how many years you've been in the IA. If you want to transfer to that local, you have to go through their apprenticeship program. So.
And I'm curious, especially here in the Madison area, because it may be different than, say, New York or Chicago, where there's a really big pool and a lot of positions around. So people probably specialize. But within the Madison membership, how much specialization is there? Because I know that, there's wardrobe calls, and there's lighting, and there's sound, and there's carpentry, and there's setting things up, and there's projection and all of that. And, how much within the Madison membership do people specialize particularly?
I mean, I have a few people who pretty much all they do is wardrobe. That's it. And but other than that, there are people who specialize that's the only thing they want to do. Mm-hmm. Different than we're different. If you want to work a lot in Madison, you have to have a wide variety of skills, because otherwise there aren't that many jobs that are just for somebody who mixes sound, or somebody who just runs a light board. So you have to be able to do a variety of skills.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the folks in the union here are so fantastic. We've got our regular IA. I've got Brad Toberman, who is sort of assigned to the Playhouse. We're very fortunate. He's been so terrific to work with, and he's been working on forward shows for years. but we also, we hire union crews when we're doing our electrics hang to put all of our lights up in the air and switch those over. And it really makes our work better, and things go faster and are well done, and they're safe, and all of that's been so important to us. So how all of the different tasks that you're describing are tasks that tend to center around public gatherings.
Yeah.
And obviously there's been an awful lot less of that in the last few months. So tell us how your membership is doing since mid-March.
We did a lot of work during the lead up into the primary. The city clerk's office, they really were hoping that people would do, obviously, absentee ballots. And because of the huge amount of absentee ballots that came in, they needed extra hands. And so our people actually did a lot of the curbside voting for them. We had a bunch of people there, as well as we always test the election equipment and make sure that it's working before it goes out, so that everything is hopefully ready to go when they open. But so after the 9th, when we finished picking up and cleaning up all the election equipment of April, there was nothing until last week. I had worked for 2 people for 11 hours. And that was the first call that I've put anybody on since April 9th. April 9th was like 6 people.
So what sorts of, I know that right after everything shut down, and, there was a huge crew that was working on the production of Wicked at Overture, and there was a sort of an immediate online fundraiser to help raise funds to support membership. But, that was in the very early days. And since then, have there been efforts to keep people going? Have people just found other work that's not, union related work? How are people doing?
Well, one thing, so the relief fund, which I organized, raised almost $11,000.
Amazing.
And so some money went into checks into people's hands who said they needed it. The criteria was that you had to have worked at least 5 shifts with us starting January 2020 through March of 2020. And I went through that entire list of names and asked people, did you want money or did you not? Those who didn't, And then we had a donor who was very concerned about people not coming back in debt. And so the money that person had donated to it went towards paying off people's past dues or fees that they may have owed, so that when they come back to work, they don't have a debt hanging over their heads. And it was very important to that person. So that about $7,000 went to people directly to their hands, and then the rest of the money went towards covering people's debts.
As things are starting to very slowly reopen, and obviously most slowly of all in performing arts and public gatherings, that sort of thing, but are you seeing any signs of work coming back anytime soon, or is it still?
Some of the companies that do installation work are starting to be able to go back into the theaters and do some of those projects. That's what the 2 guys I put to work the other day were. One of the things that I'd also done was I'd set up a thing where I contacted my neighborhood, Regent Street neighborhood, and said, I have people who are looking for work. And a lot of people I got a bunch of people work basically doing yard work, but it's something. And I also got hooked up with a landscaper. So I know several stagehands who are now working with him. Otherwise, people are doing a lot of different things, trying to figure out how to handle when we go back to work. Are we going to be required to wear masks? Are we not going to be required to wear masks? I know our local has been doing a lot of meetings where they talk to different people about their specialties. There's been a lot of online education type stuff that people have tried to do. Personally, I think if everything goes incredibly well, we might be looking at some more pickup and working around October, but it's going to depend on what the virus does and whether or not people So a lot's going to depend on that.
Yeah. Before I ask my next question, I just want to sort of shout out if there's anyone who's listening live and has a question for Justina. Scott, sounds like you got one.
We do have a question from Stuart Utley, who asked,
Ooh.
what have been some of the most satisfying or rewarding shows you have worked on, both local and touring productions, and why?
Ooh, I'm looking forward to the answer to this one.
There are a couple of shows there's one show that I have actually given up a Broadway run to work, and I know it's going to sound silly, but it's Disney musicals in schools.
Oh.
And it is an amazing program where Disney has gone in to help boost getting theatrical musical theater back into grade schools. And they do a show in the Capitol Theater usually. The kids do, they come in, all the kids who've done it, they do a couple of songs from it. And it is so amazing just watching that excitement in these little kids' faces as they're like, oh my gosh, we're in a real theater and stuff like that. So to me, that type of stuff is incredibly rewarding. I think the show that I completely loved absolutely every second of working was Walking with Dinosaurs. I think because it brought out that little kid in me, and I would come in early and stand backstage among these giant puppets, and then, but a lot of the shows that are rewarding to me are things that, because special things have happened during them. It's nothing, I could work that same production someplace else and it wouldn't mean the same because of the special relationships that you have, or that embarrassing moment that you have, or something like that makes that show special.
I love that.
What about a local show? Is there a local one that stands out?
It's so hard because I staged managed for 10 years for the Children's Theater. And there are so many shows that for a variety of different reasons. I remember one of my early Christmas carols doing, and we had several members of the cast who had serious tragedies in their family, and this show is what helped get them through the Christmas season, and it taught you a whole new perspective of life. In one case, the girl's brother had been murdered, somebody else's child had been killed. And this is how they got through the season. And those type of shows, when you're working, that there's something very special in working those.
Yeah.
And I also had a great time in a lot of forward theater shows, and one of the most embarrassing moments in a moment, which was put in a stage manager report, was forward theater. But there you go.
See, now I don't even remember that.
My breast took a light cue.
Oh my God. Yeah. That's right. Now I do.
Yeah.
Now I remember that.
What show was that?
It was during your opening speech. What show was it? She was giving her opening thing, and I was supposed to, the lights for House to Half, somebody else had set up the booth, were up, and I had been able to maneuver them to a lower position, and I'm rather large chested. So when I went and I kind of half stood to hit the lights to half, I also hit the next light cue. And it went dark, and so we had to get back out of that. And Kim's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh yeah."
We all survived.
Like, what happened? I'm like, "Well, I told you." And of course, she put it in her report, which
well,
I mean, you have to at that moment. And then at this point, obviously, I own the story. You have to at that point.
You really have. Oh, I've got stories upon stories I can tell of absolute mortifying incidents. But yeah, it was so great. You worked on a number of shows with us. Yeah, it was always great because you were so good.
I really enjoyed the President's one. There was so much I learned as a history person. My minor in college was history.
Yeah.
History. So I just loved that show.
And we've got 45 First Ladies coming up this season.
Yes, I know. I'm pretty excited about that too, because there are some fascinating First Ladies that people they don't know about really what that person really was like.
I do also have to say that the added benefit of all the shows you did with us is that you would make your famous bacon rolls, your Latvian bacon rolls.
Yep. I still make them occasionally. I made a batch of them the other day. So
delicious.
They're amazing. I mean, it's so simple, but yes, they're.
One thing that we haven't talked about is your specific role within IATSE and within the union. Scheduling people. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do with IATSE?
So, I was on the executive board for 13 and a half years as their secretary. And about 8 years ago, I added the job of call steward, which I still am the call steward. The call steward is somebody who I get the employer will say, I need X number of people who do this, this, and this for this theater at this time.
Right.
And I send out contracts a lot with new people because we have a lot of one-offs where people are coming into town and saying, hey, I'm setting up this event and I need like 8 stagehands, or I need 200 stagehands, or whatever they need. So it's a lot of scheduling and dealing with the constant ever-changing schedules that happen in the theater. You think you have everything set up, and then all of a sudden somebody, throws a wrench into that. So it's really a giant logic problem that I end up dealing with every day. And because you're dealing with people and they get sick or their cars break down or whatever happens, you constantly are on the phone trying to replace people who aren't coming into work now, which can be tricky because there are some contracts that actually stipulate that if you do not have the right number of people at the time of the start time, there's a penalty for whoever the employer is. And so you have to pay it because they go to places that try to skimp out or didn't find enough people or whatever. And so you have to pay attention. Sometimes it's not that high it's like, $25, $35 an hour, but I have seen it up into the hundreds of dollars an hour because that crew has run into problems.
I love, even I who have worked with IATSE members for years and years, there's still so much that I love learning about all the different things that you do with your crews, with your membership. And I know that for so many people in our audience whose main involvement with theater is just coming and seeing a show, I feel like it's exciting and hopefully sort of expanding to hear about so much of the stuff that goes on behind the stage and all of the people whose livelihoods are involved and whose skills come to bear on making the production be everything it can be.
It really is a community effort. I mean, it's a collaborative effort on all sorts of levels. And, I think some of the best experiences, it's one of the things that I loved working with Ford, is that even though, you're just the lighting person or whatever, if you see something, you could actually say, that might actually be better and people will actually respond positively to you. That's not true with all companies, but I know that was my experience with Ford. And there is something nice because it makes the show yours too.
Yeah.
I think the one thing I'm very proud about the local in Madison is, especially with our user groups that we work with, we take very big ownership of that. It's not Madison Ballet's Nutcracker. Well, they might think it is, but as far as we are concerned, it's ours too.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with Christmas Carol with CTM, and it's the same thing with the opera when the operas come through. We take very big ownership in the fact that this is ours too, and so we're very big about trying to protect the stage and trying to protect the performers. And I had an accident at the last opera where I tripped over a brick. And my thought as I'm falling was not, oh my gosh, I'm falling, I don't want to hurt myself, was, oh my God, I can't run into the actor who was coming off stage, who is my actor who I was going to get the prop from, because I'm like, he can't be replaced as easily. And, I explained that to the doctors and they're like, what? I'm like, trust me, it makes sense in my world. It makes sense in your world. I was worried about.
What I love about theater, there are so many different art forms, and some of them are very solitary and individual, but theater is not that. It's collaborative. And for sure, I know directors and other people who work in theater who maybe don't like to see it that way, but I always feel like put a whole bunch of smart people in the room, each of whom is really good at their individual jobs, and then listen to them because together we will solve problems and have
and everybody will see something different. And everybody will see something different. When you're directing or you're having this moment and you're kind of in that tunnel vision on that moment there, you might not see that, Joe is standing over there twiddling his thumbs and looking really uncomfortable. because that's not what you're focused on.
Right.
And somebody else who's looking at the big picture is like, why is Joe even on stage? Does anybody even know why Joe's there? And you realize, oh, I forgot to tell Joe to leave. It's that. And then those are the best feeling. Those are the best shows to work, where you feel like you're part of it.
Yeah. Scott, looks like you've got a question for us.
We do. From Julie Swenson. She wants to know what the majority of the calls are for IATSE members.
The majority of the calls are actually through Overture. Overture is our largest employer. I would say, so we actually do break down our crews as the carpenters and electricians, but overall, technically, they're called hand positions. But we do break it down that way. So that's what the majority of it. I think the vast majority of calls, there are a handful of people who are that's all they do. Gary is the lighting person in Overture Hall, Brian in the Capitol Theater. So they probably work more, have the biggest number of hours. But for the average member, the majority of the calls are shows that are in Overture.
Yeah, loading in Wicked, loading out Wicked.
Well, Wicked's still there.
Sitting there, right?
The set is still there. Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be there till either Wicked is going someplace or we need the stage.
Yeah.
So.
Our sets are still sitting in the Playhouse.
Yeah.
I mean, everything it's like frozen in time a little bit.
I think the only set that left was Peter Pan left.
Yeah.
And it had to, because the ZFX, I think it was ZFX who they had, or whoever their flying group needed their stuff back.
Right.
So I think they're the only ones who left, whose stuff is still there.
Yeah.
We had one more. We have one more question. It was saying, do you ever have a shortage of a particular kind of person for in-call? Or is everyone, I'm assuming, or is everyone just, are they all Swiss Army?
There are days at my kingdom for a rigger or for a flyman some days, or a video person. There are days that, or I need somebody very specialized who can do, well, like Brad can, lights, sound, and video for an event. And the number of people who can do all three, those triple threats, are rare. So there are days I miss those, but I'll have days where I am begging for riggers across the, begging other locals, especially if I have a big show at the Coliseum and they're calling for like 20 riggers, 20 guys. Then it gets I just actually had that. That was my last week. I was so proud of myself. The week of March 11th, that week, we had Jason Aldean was supposed to be, we set it up at the Coliseum. The show did not happen, and then we tore it down as soon as we set it up. But, I needed like 20 riggers for that. Plus I needed riggers for the Overture. Plus I needed riggers at the Sylvie. And I was like, please, just not another message for riggers. I don't have them.
Yeah, tell us what a rigger is. Thanks, Celia, for the question.
So there are a couple different types of riggers. Primarily, these are the riggers I'm talking about are the up guys or the climbers. They're the ones who are in the Coliseum or the Kohl Center. They go up into the beams, and they send down a rope, and we add steel to it. That's connected to the chain motors. And the chain motors are what's going to lift everything off the ground. And so they can be, I want to say, anywhere from like 90 feet in the air. Well, at Overture, they're standing on a grid, but our grid is 100 feet up, which they have to pull these ropes with the added weight and to it and secure it so that it'll hold the weight.
So it looked like it was kind of a two-parter. Is there for future IATSE members, is there a particular skill set that the youth in theater technician should be studying right now?
Well, if you really want to work a lot starting off, it's a job that a lot of people don't like. There goes that. That's interesting. Brick loaders, because people as they get older do not like being on their knees loading bricks. But studying video is actually very important, or anything with electronics. because our industry is really turning very computer electronic, savvy. But overall, you have to have a willingness to do anything. And the idea that some job is beneath you is what's going to hold you back. And you have to be willing to be a pusher, which gets paid less. I get that. And I had this one young man say to me once, it was demoralizing being a pusher, that he felt he was being utilized. And I pointed out to him, next to him was an older guy pushing boxes. And I said, you do know who that is, right? So I'm like, that guy used to work for a major country singer as his monitor person, his personal monitor person. He's being a pusher because he's trying to earn his hours to get his card. So, and he's not whining or complaining like you are, and you have no skills. I mean, I didn't say that, but it's like, yeah. But, compared to his mixing skills and, so it's a willingness, if you really want to make it, I think, in this business, it's a willingness to do any job and not believe that any job is beneath you. Some skills can be taught, but if you have a background or understand electronics, because that's the way the world is going in so many different ways, it's becoming far more technical things, which is why it's so much harder to find triple threats who can do lights, audio, and video, because each of them is becoming so specific.
Yeah, that's great. Justina, thank you so much. This has been an incredibly fun conversation. I'm grateful to everyone who was listening in and sending us questions as well. I'm really already enjoying this Tuesday slot. You've kicked it off beautifully for us, Justina. And then for anyone who's listening either live or later on, I hope you'll join us next Tuesday at 7. We'll have another great conversation.
Well, thank you so much for asking me. This was fun.
Thanks. Be well.
Yep.
Give our love to the membership.
I will too. All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.